The following podcast is a presentation of Small Biz America. This is Beyond Networking. And now, here's your host, Ron Sukenick.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to Beyond Networking, being with Ron Sukenick. And I am Ron Sukenick, and I am so glad that you are back and that you're joining us. And you know, this is what we do. You know, many of you have sent emails to me, and I appreciate it. And you're saying, Ron, just keep bringing on interesting people so we can discuss on how we can take networking and relationships and take them to new levels. And, in fact, that's what we do. If you're new to the podcast, we meet every week, and we bring interesting people on to have a discussion about how to take networking to new levels. And this is not where we talk about passing business cards and shaking hands and making follow-up phone calls. We get way beyond it, and we do it by inviting in innovative thinkers and creators that can and do share real strategies and real techniques on how you can be and take your thinking to another level. And today is no exception. We have a guest. By the way, with a quick show of hands, how many people know Jason Alba? Okay, I know you're laughing. I know you're saying, Ron, this is a podcast. I can't see anybody raising hands, and you're right. But Jason Alba is our guest today. He's a job-seeking and networking advocate. Here's a gentleman that got laid off in January of 2006, a few weeks after Christmas, and even though he had great credentials, he was, and it was a job seeker's market, Jason could barely get a job interview, and then he finally stepped back, figured out what was going on, looked at the available resources, and put together, and he is currently the CEO at JibberJobber.com. He's also the career editor at the National Networker, and if that's not enough, he's the author of the book, I'm on LinkedIn, Now What? Jason, you're on the podcast. Now
Hi,
what?
Ron. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Jason,
now what?
thanks. Now what? Listen, we've got a big animal, and let me tell you something. I think what you did with this book is incredible. I've had a chance to review it. You know, I should be so lucky where the book, and here are some of the comments from so many of them, but the book takes the guesswork out to utilize LinkedIn and is unquestionably a friendly user guide, authoritative, insightful, highly practical, great resource. My God, the list goes on. So help me out on something. LinkedIn today is one of dozens and dozens of social networking sites. How many people are on LinkedIn today, Jason?
Last count I heard was 17 million. They say they're growing by about 1.1 million each month. Okay,
so 17 million, 1 million people coming in every month. And you know that? What a great title. It's so real, isn't it? I meet so many people, Jason, that they say, I'm on LinkedIn. Now what? And at least now I can say, well, you got to get Jason's book. But and I know you appreciate that, so I'm not trying to make you feel good. I'm just saying
Sure.
It's a great tool, Jason.
Thank you.
And it's a big animal. So why LinkedIn as opposed to others, or is it possible I can be on multiple sites? And if I had a life, because everybody's so busy, aren't they? Give me some suggestions on that.
Well, you know, that's there's a lot of ways to answer that question. Let me just see if I can brainstorm here. The reason why I wrote the book specifically on LinkedIn is because that's where most of my JibberJobber users they were coming back to me, because LinkedIn is the leading business network, right? It's not Facebook or definitely not MySpace, and there are dozens and dozens of social network tools or websites, but LinkedIn is the leading place where especially professionals in transition talk about, because there's so many recruiters and hiring managers and stuff like that on LinkedIn. So I felt like it was the most important tool that my JibberJobber users could use to do social networking. I'm right now just finishing up a book called I'm on Facebook Now What? So to answer your question...
Come on, Jason. Are you serious? Come on.
I don't know why I'm writing all these books. You know, it just kind of happened.
So okay, and then you're going to tell me that I'm on MySpace now. What, right?
No,
come on.
Well, actually, at this point in the writing process, it happened to me on my other book. Is I get to this point and I say I will never ever write another book. So, but you know, Facebook. The reason why I went the direction with this book on Facebook is because they are becoming much more friendly to organizations and companies as well as professionals. They opened up to non-college students fairly recently, and so you see a lot of professionals and recruiters poking around trying to figure it out. So, your question, should I be on multiple networks? I would say absolutely on LinkedIn. There's very low overhead. You don't have to spend much time because there's not a whole lot you can do on LinkedIn. If you're in the United States, I would say get on Facebook. And if you have a business or a small business, and obviously this is Small Biz America, I would highly recommend a Facebook strategy. And then beyond that, I would only recommend other networks if it meets your niche target audience. Like if you're selling to 14-year-old kids, then go get a MySpace page. If you're selling to Latin America or Europe, then go find the social network that's most appropriate for those places.
Okay, then that makes sense. So let's get back to LinkedIn for a moment because that's what I want to talk about. I'm on LinkedIn now. What? So we know the book is designed to help people get the most. In fact, literally, I can take my business networking to new levels if I can really understand what to do. So you break it down in such a way, getting started, introduction, what is LinkedIn. So it's nicely laid out. But how much actual research did you put into it from maybe asking other people, or did you deal with LinkedIn directly, or is it just from your experience? Give me some insight on that.
I really didn't get any information from LinkedIn. This is an unauthorized book. And that's all I'll say about that. I did get a lot of input from other people. I'm on a forum, a Yahoo group with, right now there's over 8,000 people. It's called My LinkedIn Power Forum. And there's some amazing brain share going on there. People are sharing how they're using LinkedIn for business, for personal, business development, job search, all those different things. So I got a lot of feedback from them. I also used the LinkedIn Answers feature, which is new as of January of this year. It's, in my opinion, one of the most powerful features. And then a lot of it came from just my personal experience and kind of tripping over myself as I tried to understand what LinkedIn was and get value out of it for my own job search, but I really didn't, it just wasn't working for me. So I had to scratch my head and ask a lot of the questions that I'm trying to answer in the book.
Okay, so we know it's a tool, and if we can understand the tool, we can benefit from the tool. So help me out on a couple of things, Jason. In fact, I'm a member of LinkedIn. I may have a couple of hundred connections, and every day I get people wanting me to connect with them, and I want to connect with them, and I want to make the most of it, but yet I'm busy and I've got a life and I've got all kinds of stuff I got to get done. And by the way, I don't pay anything to be on LinkedIn. And I know you can pay. Can you comment on that for a moment? What's your take on all that, and what's the real benefit for me to upgrade, if you will?
I only recommend that people upgrade if they're a recruiter or a sourcer, or they spend a lot of time online in business development looking for contacts. I don't recommend that even job seekers who might spend a lot of time upgrade. So it's not. I don't think there's a lot of value in upgrading. There is a hidden. If you go to the upgrade page, it starts at $20 a month. If you go down to the very bottom of LinkedIn, there's a special link down there that allows you to upgrade for only $6.95. I think it's called a personal plan or something like that.
Good advice.
But I never recommend people to upgrade unless they're a recruiter, really.
Really? Okay. So and this is so job seekers, and even though we're not necessarily just talking about job seekers, but of course they network and they get on these sites. So a job seeker can in fact get involved in LinkedIn, pay nothing, and get connected and reach out and land jobs. So what is that degree of success? Are you familiar with any of those numbers?
I don't know any numbers, but I do know that I think a significant amount of revenue from LinkedIn comes from recruiters. And most of the recruiters that I've talked to about LinkedIn and the differences between LinkedIn and Facebook say hands down LinkedIn is the leader. They haven't really been able to wrap their brains around using Facebook as a sourcing tool. But they're all over LinkedIn. So, when you're in a job search or when you're not in a job search, it's an excellent place for you to kind of hang out your card and say, here I am and here's what my skills are, because you never know who's looking for somebody like you, right?
Okay, right. Now let's move into business. Put on your business building hat. You come onto LinkedIn and you want to get connected. You want to build relationships. What are some of the mistakes that people are making? I don't know if there's 3 mistakes, 5 mistakes, but what are most common mistakes that people make when they get onto LinkedIn and are trying to make something happen?
I think there's 2 mistakes that I can see that commonly happen, and they're both on opposite ends of the spectrum. The first and probably most common mistake is that people accept an invitation to join LinkedIn. They go in, they kind of poke around, maybe start putting in part of a profile, right? Maybe like 1/3 of what should really be in your profile. And then they just kind of, it's just not working for them, so they never go back. There's just a few more things that you can do to really be in a position where LinkedIn actually is adding value to your business or to business development or something like that.
So I think what you're saying is if you could put a profile in, why not go 100% of filling out that profile?
If I go to your profile page and I don't get very much information from there, number one, it tells me that you're not really into LinkedIn, which is okay. I mean, it's not like I'm going to judge you on that or anything. But what you want me to do is to be able to find out as much information as I should about you just from your LinkedIn profile. Don't make me go to Google to learn more about you. Got it.
Right? That makes sense. So one mistake, and I apologize if I missed something, but one mistake is, in fact, that I know you talked about accepting invitations, but are people just accepting it with nothing behind it? They accept it, and because I'm noticing, and maybe I didn't even ask that question correctly. Was that one of the mistakes, that people just accept these invitations, but there's nothing more behind it?
This is probably one of the biggest debates within LinkedIn users, almost to a religious level. You have your people who are conservative networkers or LinkedIn users who basically follow what LinkedIn wants you to follow, which is only connect with people that you know and trust, right? And then you have other people on the very end, the opposite end, who are saying, I'm going to connect with anybody I can because the bigger my network is, the more reach I have and the more influence I have for, various people.
Got it.
You're going to find recruiters to be more open networkers than conservative, because if they want to go do a search for candidates, they want to search on a huge database, not a little database, right?
Got it. Makes sense. And I think you also stated that if you're going to fill out, so another mistake is, in fact, if you're going to put your profile together, just don't put 1/3 of the information in, put as much as you can. So those are... okay, I got that. Now, what else comes to your mind?
The other mistake, which is on the opposite end of that spectrum, is, so on the one end you have people that just kind of go poke around, kick the tires, and then walk away, right? On the total opposite end of the spectrum, it's kind of, makes me chuckle. You got people who are becoming fanatics about LinkedIn, and they will send invitations to people, almost commanding people to join LinkedIn because it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I think that, it's great for LinkedIn that it has such evangelists, but, it's a turnoff for people, because how many social networking invitations do you get every week or every month,
I hear you.
So I think that, when people get too fanatical, one of the problems that I see with those fanatical people that just absolutely live within LinkedIn is sometimes it seems like their network only consists of people that are in LinkedIn. Well, I do a lot of networking outside on the phone, in my blog, face-to-face, other states. There's people that I'll never have in my LinkedIn network, but these are people within my real-life network. And I think it's a shame when people don't recognize that they should have a network outside of what their little LinkedIn database is.
Okay, good. And I hear you. So sure. So the book talks about getting started, introduction, what is LinkedIn. You take people through understanding the profiles, the accounts, connecting with others, making it work for you. And then, of course, you move into things like searching. Let me. I'm going to throw something out, and not that I know all these answers, but I'm sure you do because it's in your book. If I've got hundreds and hundreds of contacts, people that are connected to me, and I can send out a question to all these people. Am I allowed so many questions that I can send to people on a free account?
Actually, there's no difference whether you're paying or not. I think you get 7 questions a month.
Okay, so I can send out a question to people, and I'm looking for mass merchandising contacts. How do I reach beyond the 200 people that I'm connected to at a first level? Does it automatically go out to everybody beyond that or not?
It doesn't go out. So when you write a question, and actually questions for me is one of the most fascinating parts of LinkedIn. When you write a question or in the answer section of LinkedIn, you have the ability towards the end of this process to say, I want to email my question to up to 200 of my first-degree contacts, and it allows me to choose. So if you have 200 or less, you just click once, and it selects them all. And then when you hit next, then it sends out an email individually to each of those people. If you have more than 200 connections, you have to individually check 200, check boxes to send it out. So those people automatically get a notice. Let's say, for example, you have 500 connections. So you send out 200 emails. Any of the other 300 people, when they log into LinkedIn, or I should say if they log into LinkedIn, they'll see your question on their front page.
Wow. So if I've got if I've got a pretty strong network of people that are open and willing and supportive, I can put out a question to 200 people and, in fact, get 25, 30, 40 answers. Yeah,
absolutely.
Wow.
It's very powerful.
Yeah, no, it is. So, and I know that, and you also go through in your book, of course, understanding the degrees of separation. And talk to me a little bit about recommendations. What's the take on that? Are people just recommending people, or are they, or are you asking to be recommended? I mean, how's that all coming together, and how does that help?
Okay, so I mean, on your website, we're talking about getting beyond that business card passing, right, and really get into a real relationship. I think recommendations is a very powerful way to take a relationship with somebody to the next level. Imagine if you open your inbox one morning and there's an email that says Jason Alba recommended you, and there's this paragraph of nice, flowery, professional, and specific stuff saying what a great guy Ron is. That's very flattering, right?
I'd love that. Are you sending me an email like that, Jason?
Let me make a note of that.
Yeah, I need one of those. No, okay, so I got it, so keep going.
So I think that it's a very strong strategy or tactic to pick somebody in your network maybe once a day or once a week and go write a recommendation. Someone that you used to work with, someone that you were on a project with, a customer, a vendor. Just go out and proactively write specific recommendations. Don't be general or vague, right? You want to say, when I worked with Ron on this project, he had high integrity and blah, blah, blah. You want to be very specific so it really adds value to that person's profile. But I think that's an excellent way to really reach out and touch that contact. Now, what happens when you go in, LinkedIn basically sends you that email and they say, click here if you want to show this recommendation on your profile. When you go in there and say, yes, I like this recommendation, I want to show it, then the next page says, would you like to recommend Jason back? And that's probably the best way for you to ask for me to ask for a recommendation is to go give you one, right?
I love that, Jason. That is smart. So and a lot of this is certainly in your book. So I think that is your book in a sense giving me strategy on how to use LinkedIn once I'm there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay, good. I love that.
And
by the way,
for all the stuff
ahead.
that I missed or the new stuff, I have a website that basically complements the book. They kind of sit side by side.
Yeah, and by the way, let me just get that out on the podcast right now. What website is that?
If you go to I'm on LinkedIn nowwhat.com. I know it's long, but it's the same as the title. I'm on LinkedIn nowwhat.com.
Okay, I'm on LinkedIn now. What.com. Got it.
It
is long, but it's pretty consistent with what you do with the book. So what I'm going to find at that website is what? I can find the book. I can buy the book if I want. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And I can also get updates because you have updates. And is that how you're providing updates to the field?
Well, let me give you an example. One of the things that I think is, like I said, Answers is really powerful. There's a guy that uses Answers as part of his marketing strategy like no one else I've ever seen. Is Director Tom, DirectorTom.com. He did a guest post for me on the 5th of December, and he lays out what his strategy and how he does Answers. He's phenomenal. He's the master of Answers on LinkedIn. So that's something that I maybe didn't know about or I couldn't fit into the book. It's on my blog.
I got it. So you're sharing, and so okay, got it. That makes a lot of sense. By the way, I know you discussed a bunch about service. You have a whole chapter on services. You have a chapter on LinkedIn groups. And so tell me a little bit about that. It seems like it's somewhat elusive.
Yeah.
And I know you even make that comment, but give me some feedback on groups.
Let me give you a very quick story. When I was trying to do research on groups, because I didn't have very much experience with groups, I'm a member of a couple groups, but I mean, in my whole year or whatever that I've been in groups, I've never seen anything from them. I went and asked the My LinkedIn Power Forum the question, what's the value of the LinkedIn group? And everybody that replied back spouted off these great values and benefits, but they were all talking about the Yahoo group, My LinkedIn Power Forum. None of them talked about any LinkedIn group. So there is value in having a LinkedIn group. So if you're an alumni group or if you want to get your customers together or something like that, then basically what you're doing, everybody that's in the group, it's almost as if you were a first-degree contact with those people. That's basically what's happening there. But that's about it. I mean, there's no collaboration or anything like that. Okay,
now I know you have a whole chapter on Answers, and then you kind of wrap it up in what you call Part 3, and then I love the branding thing, but because you talk about LinkedIn for personal branding, but I just want to ask, get a couple of things from you right now. In Chapter 14, you talk about shady practices. What do I need to watch out for? What do I need to pay attention to, Jason?
I think the bottom line here with shady practices, first of all, it's not a very common thing to come across something that's shady, but it does happen. So if you're in LinkedIn and you're trying to reach out to somebody and maybe you want to connect with one of their connections and they come back and they say, I'd be happy to connect you, it's $100. There's people that actually do that and they feel justified.
Do they really, Jason?
They feel justified because they're developing relationships and obviously you want part of their relationship and they think they can charge money for that. I think the bottom line with this shady practice thing is when you're going through your LinkedIn experience, if you kind of get a weird feeling about something, it might just be shady. So don't jump into it.
By the way, I got an email the other day on Monday, December 17th. You're going to love this. It says, do you know Craig Campana?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, nice guy, interesting guy. He says, look, could you introduce me to Jason Alba? Be at LinkedIn.
Nice.
Is that great? So, and by the way, he's a whole B&I director, been around the whole B&I movement for a while, and not that you know this, but I was a business partner with Dr. Meisner going back to 87.
Okay.
And was very much involved in the worldwide expansion of B&I back in 1988. So I'm,
cool.
In fact, one of the longest-running members in the world. The only lifetime member in the world, but I did. He did. He sent me this email, so I'll go ahead and make the introduction. I better learn how to use LinkedIn, and in fact, I committed to reading 30. Now, how many pages? I've been saying I'm going to read 30 pages a day and I'm trying to get through it. How many pages is this book, Jason?
This book, let's see, it looks like it's about 107 pages.
Okay, and I think I'm up to 80-something. I got to get through it. I was almost stressing out, saying, "Oh, I better read this book before I talk to Jason." But no, I don't need to do that. But what a big animal! You talk about netiquette, complementary tools, resources, and then there's a conclusion. And so, what do you say in your conclusion? Listen, everybody, Chapter 17. This book covers a lot of stuff. Okay, yeah, it does. But I'll tell you, what a tool. What a tool, Jason. I just, and I'm not trying to make you feel good. I just think this is a great tool. I don't know of, maybe there's other tools. We're certainly not going to talk about other tools to learn about LinkedIn. But so if we stop talking about the book, and I want to jump over to JibberJobber just for an introduction before we say goodbye today. From a conclusion standpoint, what would you tell the listening audience just from what we talked about so far about LinkedIn and your book?
Well, I think the most important thing that I like to tell people about LinkedIn is that it's an outstanding tool, but it's just a tool. Developing relationships and going beyond the technology is your job. Don't just get connections and don't just try and go for numbers. What you really want is the relationships.
Oh, I love that, and that's great. Now, I want to jump in very quickly because we're coming to the end of the podcast. I know a lot of you that are listening are saying, "Ron, we really want to hear from Jason again," but you need to send me the email if that's what you want. Let's talk about JibberJobber for a moment, and what is it?
I'll try and tell you in 30 seconds. JibberJobber is like Salesforce for an individual. Okay, so for an individual managing your career, and it could be your small business or whatever. But every time you make a contact or you come across a company or you make contact with a company, send your resume or whatever, anything that you do that might be beneficial down the line in your career, that's you would use JibberJobber to track log entries, create action items, tie people to companies. There's a place where you can go put in your elevator pitches and work on wordsmith those to have in different situations. Basically what I did is I took all the career advice and the networking advice that I could find and put it into a tool so you could actually put it into practice.
That's incredible. And JibberJobber, now, where'd you come up with that name?
A friend of mine who's very creative, I give him about 30 boring names, and he called me the next day and he said, "What about JibberJobber?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's it." I love it.
Don't you hate that? I do the same thing. I come up with 10, 15, 20 different ideas, and someone else always comes up with something that we think is better. So what are we going to?
It's good to have friends.
Isn't it? So, today we've been speaking with Jason Alba. He's a job-seeking and networking advocate, author of the book, I'm on LinkedIn, Now What? And of course, the CEO of JibberJobber. And by the way, if you want to learn more about Jason, Jason said, hey, go to JibberJobber. So let's make sure, will you spell that for people, Jason, so they know how to get there? JibberJobber.com. Okay, and if people want to connect with you, Jason, and I think you said you love to receive emails, is it Jason@JibberJobber.com?
That's right.
Okay, and Jason is Jason. And in closing, Jason, we always like to leave the listening audience thinking about something, and I call them thinking points for connecting forward. So, Jason, what thinking point can you leave for the audience today?
I'm going to steal this from Keith Ferrazzi. I think it's the most critical thing of networking. Build intimate relationships.
Wow. So you did steal it, and it was great. And by the way, well said. Thank you so much, Jason. And I'm certainly looking forward to meeting you face-to-face, and I love your work. Keep it going.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Beyond Networking. For more information or to subscribe to this podcast, visit smallbizamerica.com.
Small Biz America.